Okay, we're welcome, and we're back to continuing our talk about Avraham. If you weren't here last time, I think there were only two others here. I'm not sure if you were here, Akiva, but we're in Lech L'choh, and we're in installment 2, and actually 3, but we started over again last time and finishing off this this piece here. Okay. So, just a quick review. What we learned. So, Avraham, 75 years old, his name gets changed to Avraham. His path back to God started a long time ago. In fact, I guess it's worth mentioning. It starts way before what the Chumash speaks about. The first Avraham's birth is mentioned right at the end of chapter Noah, but then we zoom in the next chapter to when he's 75 and time to go out of Haran. And between there, just briefly, he was the son of a man whose business, and he did quite well in this business, Terach, was idol making. And Terach was also a superior in the ranks of the king of the time. And Avram was a rebel. At an early age, the idols began to break in his head before he actually started breaking them. And he was brought to the monarch. He was thrown in the fire. He had a tough time on the road to Lech L'choh, to finding himself. As one of the lines in the song that I saw recently, I actually posted here, is the way of coming home is by leaving home. It's interesting. He's the first Jew. He starts the 2,000 years of Torah, and the first Jew is a Baal Shuvah, which I find very deep. Being at least named a Baal Shuvah myself, that was my history. Is my history, and it's a different history, and therefore with different nuances and results than someone who's born into it, not a Baal Shuvah. He's a Baal Shuvah, and so the first Jew is a Baal Shuvah. Just wanted to point that out. So he gets this letter Hey, and this letter Hey is a large part of what we learned the last time. He comes from being Avram. He comes from being the high Ram father to bringing down that high fatherness, which he said fatherness is Chokhmah, but the highest part of Chokhmah reaches into way beyond Chokhmah. He brings the core of godliness, the etzem of godliness, down through this letter Hey. It's the letter, the Avram is high, and the Avraham, the Hey, has breadth and width and down. So he starts this whole channel. That's why the 2,000 years of Torah begin with him, because Torah is the word Torah is the word Heroah, which means to teach. And we Jews, and this Baal Shuvah Jew, the first Jew, was brought into the world to teach the world about Hashem and the relationship that we human beings are meant to have with Hashem. And that really started with when he got the letter Hey. And then a few years later, at 99, so 75, 99, he gets called to a bris, to his own bris. He gets called to his own bris. And so he is the first, again, human Jew, Baal Shuvah, who gives himself away to do the commandment of Hashem. The mitzvahs before Torah were given belong to bringing their spirit, their panemius of the mitzvahs before the Torah was given. That breakthrough is the gift that Abraham was given and the gift that he's given us. Okay. Oh, I guess one more thing should be good to mention. Um, yeah, and please interrupt me, guys, if anything I'm saying here, you want to talk about it or have a question, please. The one more thing I wanted to say is, let me just get a hold of it here. No, escaped. Okay, so let's start. So, it came back to me. This Avraham, remember, I didn't quite say this, it was said at the beginning and quite over and over again. Avraham belongs to the Midah of Chesed, God's Chesed. Yitzhak, we'll learn later, belongs to Gevurah, okay? Because Avraham is also in his ubiquitous dissemination of godliness, he translates that into dissemination of food, right? And with his wife Sarah, the first, sometimes, it's kind of lightly but truthfully called the first shluchim, and they were out to get everybody, the whole world. I mean, there were no other Jews. They were out to bring people back who were to godliness, to their root in godliness before there was any notion of a Jew versus other nations. Okay. And this quality of Chesed and all the qualities that we speak about are also qualities of ourselves. That's the point I wanted to make. That when God created man, he said, Naseh Odom, let us make man in our image. B'Tselem Kedemuseh, in our image. And B'Tselem. So everything that we're going to say here about Abraham, the person, of course applies to us because he's our spiritual father for all of us. And what goes on in him, which goes on in us, echoes exactly the same structures and mechanisms that are going on in God himself. From the time God emanated the 10 spheros, he emanated spheros called Chochmah Bina Das, Chesed Gevurah Tiferes, and they are what we experience and are at the root of our soul as it's embodied in the body, is our own Chabad, Chochmah Bina Das. Okay, so this is it's an illumination stemming from Etzem that gets concentrated in this soul body called Avraham, which then gets schlepped to Rome and other places. The soul, our wandering Jew souls, are schlepped everywhere in order to act out just what Avraham acted out. Number one, to leave his home when the Pshat in Lech L'choh, which is where this mimer is it's queer. It says, I mean, the simple English could be, take yourself and go. L'choh, yourself, go you yourself. But the more Chassidish, the way that it's understood is, go to yourself. In other words, and that harks with that line from the song that I have over here. The way of coming home is by leaving home. He left his whole culture and his whole father's house and is growing up with Terach, and the rest is history. Okay, now I can finally get where we start. Okay. To understand Hebrew. Okay, to understand everything we've said in terms of avoda. This is, in other words, let's bring it down to ourselves. Everything that we just said about Abraham and et cetera, which I won't repeat, thankfully. We have to understand it, because if the Torah is a teaching, it has to teach us something about ourselves and how we are meant to interact with ourselves and outside ourselves. So lahavan zeh b'avoda, to understand this, as it has to do with avodas Hashem. Hine omro, there's the expression in Bereshis Rabbah, the following expression. I'll read in Hebrew and I'll translate. Naivleis chochmah, the dregs of chochmah. Now imagine a piece of fruit on a tree, and it's growing and growing. It's becoming, more whole and sweet. And then there's a stage after that, which it becomes degrading. So it said, Noilas Chochmah, the degraded Chochmah, degraded fruit in the tree, up above, Shelmaila Torah. And the Chochmah that we call Torah. This is if you haven't heard it, it's a deep thing to say that thing which we call Torah, which is the teaching of God to everything, to the entirety of creation, is only called a dreg of Chochmah relative to God's essence before he exudes the wisdom of Chochmah. Okay? Because, first of all, the Torah dregs, meaning it's like down at low on the totem pole, right? Even though, on the other hand, it's not. Okay, but from this perspective, because the Torah, what does it talk about? The Torah talks about physical things, right? Physical things. And this, you have to know, however, that these physical things, that the thingness of it and the life force of it, the spirit of it, the animation of it, etc., depending on what level it's on. If it's a plant, the animation of it, the quality of it, just like a gem in the earth, right? So the Torah gets involved and is given specifically to the place of the lowest of the low, the most physical of the physical. And that means it's invested in physical things. And that is from a level, you should know, that low investment of what we call Torah as a teaching of God's Chochmah, it comes from a level which is called in the Zohar, Hachim b'lei b'chochmah yediyah, a level of Chochmah, but not a known Chochmah. So we start getting into the topic which which more or less we get into almost everywhere in Chassidus, is the infinite layers of all reality, and reality itself being only an effusion from a God who is deeper, has to be deeper. The creator has to be deeper than the created, who is deeper than all of reality. So that revealed Chochmah comes from a place of a Chochmah that's not known. A level in godliness where the Chochmah, like in your inner, you have an inner dimension of thinking. Before you think, an idea rises up in your head. And somehow there's a source for that idea that rises in your head, but we don't know it, you don't see it. That's analogous to Chochmah, which is not known. But it spawns everything else below it. So the supernal Chochmah, it's not in the realm of understanding at all. It's only when understood, graspable, when this Chochmah descends. This is the dreg, so to speak, the hanging off the branch of Chochmah. When it descends and becomes enclosed in physical things. And when that happens, so here's an interesting thing to think about, when God's level of Chochmah, which is not a knowable Chochmah, becomes invested in us taking an esrog, for example, since the Chochmah of God, not only revealed Chochmah, but the before revealed Chochmah of God, is enclosed within it. So when we take the esrog, this is, as again said, just for example, this is all about avoiding, right? So you can generalize here, as you said, esrog al derech mashal, for way of an example, generalized to the entire mitzvah system, everything from keeping kosher to just laws to bringing Mashiach, name it. Okay, I mean there are laws about that as well. Okay. So, but whenever you're doing that, at whatever level of detail, it's as if you're grasping also the most supernal levels of God's Chochmah. So, the drawing down of Chochmah, now that was Avram, remember? Avraham. Father, maybe you didn't say this, I mean, he brought it on the first point, I have to say, in terms of the structure of the Spheros, Chochmah is drawn down to Bina, and then Bina, I think I said this already, right? Okay. So this drawing down of Chochmah, where does it start? Archetypally? Where does it start sort of as an archetype? In this Avram, who was first called Avram. Father is Chochmah, mother is Bina, right? And he's at that high level. He's at that, what did he call it? The Chokhmah, the level of which is called supernal Chokhmah, which is Chokhmah that's not known yet, hasn't emerged yet. He comes from there, and that gets drawn down into every mitzvah that we do. Every mitzvah in the Torah has this level with it. Because through the light of, now he names, what's the higher level? The level just above the higher level of Chokhmah, the hook of the Yud that goes up, that's called the Keser, right? And there's an interface between Keser, just let's call it allness and somethingness. Initially, all there is God. And then somehow there's a something that appears to be outside of it comes into being. So that infusion or interface between that allness and the somethingness is the source of the allness. The allness we'll call Keser, we'll call crown, and the ability to be infused down below is through that Yud at the top of the dot of the Yud. If you look at a Yud on the page, the top hook brings down the light of the crown. Because the Zohar says that that the Torah is drawn from Chokhmah. Now here I have to explain this. The word for Torah here, this is Aramaic. The Aramaic word for Torah, and you may have heard this before, I may have used it it may become to this, four in other classes perhaps. The word in Torah, in Aramaic for Torah is oraisa. It says oraisa v'kudshebricha kulu chad. That's all Aramaic. Oraisa, the Torah, and kudshebricha, which we would say the Holy One, blessed be He, are like one. Now, if you take that word oraisa, if you're looking at a text, it's of course much easier. It's made up of the word light, or, and yasa, which is Aramaic for comes. It comes down. So the Torah it's the first light, the dawn of Hashem beaming out a beam of light. And it comes down and down and down and penetrates all of reality, there to be discovered by a guy like Avraham Avinu and his wife Sarah through a lot of hard work and revealed. So that's Torah. The Torah is drawn from Chokhmah in a revealed way. Yeah, that's the way we see the Torah down here, the revealed Torah. But the source of the Torah is much, much higher, because the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah and the 7 mitzvahs of the Rabbanim, 613 plus 7 is 620, is Gematria Keser, 620. And Keser has an equality if you change the letters around and see, it's better to see this, right? That 620, Behem Terach Amudei Or, they're the 600 pillars of light mentioned in the Kabbalah. And this is the path of, it's an expression in the Zohar. This source of Chokhmah, this light of Chokhmah, Or Yasa, right, is Keser, which is 620, which are just, this is all Kabbalistic, which are all the 620 pillars of the light and the pathway to whiteness. In other words, when you include all the lights together, you get a white light. And that white light is like the whiteness of the skull, not a numbskull, just like the skull appears to be just as a bone, a nothing. But there's a lot of hiddenness in the bones, in the bone, and especially in the, it happens to be that the word etzem, which is essence, and the word bone are the same. Now, I've never heard anybody or seen anybody elucidate on that, but it just seems obvious to me. And that's where the blood is manufactured. So when we, it belies itself, doesn't it? It appears to be just, and this is Keser, it belies itself. It just appears to be a smooth surface because nothing yet is differentiated. But then from there comes this beam of light, which is the beginning of differentiation. And that's the interface between Keser and the Seder Histalshalos, the rest of, the 10 factors, the 10 fiats of creation. Okay. So, similarly.
Wait, before you go forward,
Yeah.
would you please, maybe, I don't know, I'm just murky on when you said the interface between Kesser and
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Okay.
the
So here's an interesting statement from the Rebbe of Shav. I found this very interesting. We all, maybe, but it's current in the mouth of a lot of Orthodox Jews to know that the creation is a yesh me'ayin, right? Something from nothing. Is that a familiar term to people on this call? Yesh me'ayin, something from nothing?
Yes.
To you it is. Okay. All right. So the Rebbe Rashav says astoundingly that this yesh and this ayin have nothing in common. Nothing. And yet, there's an interface and an interrelationship between them. Now, one of the profound, if you think about it, profundities of that, is meaning that this yesh, this stuff that's, look wherever you are in front of you, this stuff that's there, this is the yesh, owes its very being and its life, if it's moving at all, to the ayin, which is present in it. If the ayin weren't present in it, it would not have any existence whatsoever. If the ayin weren't present in the yesh would have no existence whatsoever. Because if the thing becomes overcome with ayin, the yesh disappears. So in a very real sense, they're opposites, yesh and ayin. Ayin is nothing, and yesh is something. And yet they get together to the extent that this creates this whole nexus of energy where everything is taking from essence, way up there in the ayin, is being infused into absolutely everything in the creation. That's the power of ishavus, of continual being that God brings forth. He is the one who brings everything into being and keeps them in life, and that force is there, but you can't touch that force. But if that force were not with you, you wouldn't have any existence. There would be nothing here at all. It would just be allness. I mean, the simplest way I always put it, I don't know if it's understandable, ayin, translated in English, is nothing. And I think I've said this to you guys before. I just break it up into no thing. There's a realm where it has no thingness whatsoever. No time, no space, no good, no bad, nothing of anything that you can possibly say or think. And that's God himself, way beyond. But thatness is in all the physicalness, the lowest of the low, even though if you describe each one on its own, it doesn't make any sense. They have no affinity to each other. All right, does that make, so far, that's the first point. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so here's a reality, every level of reality, of two things which have no affinity to each other. The medium, let's not do it. Well, I'll call it the medium. The medium is like a space, a place, an energy. The energetic of allowing those things to come together in just the way that Hashem intends, that every yesh should come to a realization of the ayin which is within it, and that the ayin, from the ayin's perspective, so it doesn't argue with God and says, okay, even though I have no business down here, like the angels who said, why are you giving the Torah to humans? Look at how they degrade you, and they put up idol worships. And God answered to them, and they said, why don't you give the Torah to us? This is Midrash. So God says to them, do you have a Yetzer Hara? In other words, that's the answer. I want, for whatever godly, I would normally say ungodly, but godly reason, he wants his allness to be invested in what initially at least looks like the darkness. Okay. So the medium of interface between those two uninterfaceable, paradoxical things is Chokhmah. Chokhmah me'ayin timotzi, because Chokhmah, okay, I'm not really going into this. I'm fine with it, but we're not making progress. I hope everyone else is fine. Okay, but go. Chokhmah, in a very real sense, models these two opposites. On the one hand, remember, I told you, Chokhmah is on the right? Remember, in the way the Kabbalists see it, on the right is Chokhmah in the brain, then Bina on the left, right? And the right side is associated with the midas of Chesed. Chesed is about giving, right? So Chokhmah is designed to give, because there has to be this, I'm not going to call it a flow, it's more like a quantum leap, which is also, I think, a poor metaphor, but I'm not come up with anything closer yet. It's not really a flow, it's a quantum leap, but he has that vehicle to interface, because his natural state, or her natural state, Chokhmah, it's actually feminine, Chokhmah, Bina, they're all feminine. His natural state is to give, Chesed. Chokhmah manifests in the midah of Chesed, of giving. And at the same time, Chokhmah, well, this is the thing that I have to say, I've not heard it anywhere except in my own head, but I believe it's true. Chokhmah, I'll tell you what, with Chassidus, just the dot. So Chokhmah has something to give. And that's indicated, again, you look at the letter in the Sefer Torah, it has a hook on the bottom and a hook on the top. So this is the hook on the bottom. It's designed for giving, coming down. At the same time, before we get to the hook up above, it's a dot, meaning it's a point. Now, this is the thing that dawned on me one day, that I took a little geometry when I was in high school, and we learned Euclid's plane geometry. And in Euclid's plane geometry, forget the name of his treatise, he defines point, a line, a plane, and a solid. Without going too far, the point. What's Euclid's definition of a point is an entity of zero dimension, which doesn't exist. It's not, if you think it's not a physical thing, a point, when you define it as a thing that has no dimension. Because no matter how refined your pinpoint may be, down to levels of granular, microscopic, submicroscopic levels that we haven't even delved at, it's still going to have some dimension. And a point is not in the realm of dimensionality at all, which is like the ion, right? No thing, no dimensionality at all. And Chokhmah has a hook into that. So these two characters, Chokhmah, the other important thing, Chokhmah is also, the power to wisdom doesn't come from a lot of knowledge, though the subject may require a lot of predecessor knowledge in order for your wisdom to develop. But wisdom comes from a flash. Wisdom comes from, and it's an insight, right? That's a pretty good word at all. Seeing into something. That's the power of Chokhmah. Being is about understanding. Chokhmah sees in. Now, why can it see in? Because it's a nothing. It has no self to protect. It has no space. It has no limit that bothers him in any way from being, by his very nature, nothing, meaning he's not an entity, but we'll call him an entity that's totally given over to the ayin, to the nothing, to the etzem, to the essence of Hashem. So therefore, Chokhmah becomes the interface between the ayin and the yesh. Does that help?
Yes, thank you so much.
I hope I didn't talk too much, but just sort of kind of putting together my own head based on things that I come in contact with. Okay. You other people here are silent. Are we okay? Give me at least a high sign. Are okay?
Yes.
Yeah, Akiva. Okay, good. Thank you.
Yes.
And Mo's hanging in at least. Okay, and Tuvia. All right. Okay. So that's the skinny or the fat on Yesh Me'ayin and on Torah teaching from the high, the essence drawn down. Where am I going to go from here? 1 second. Okay, this is a good place to start. So since the ayin is invested in the yesh on all levels, and therefore, God, who is way out of the bounds of any even talk about limitation, can paradoxically and does invest himself and actually creates the whole idea of limitation. And therefore, there can be a unity at these higher levels through the physical things. Now, he's giving us an insight into mitzvahs, right? Remember, this is the whole paragraph is about avoiding, right? Avram brought Hashem down into the world with the letter Hey. The Hey is symbolic of his relationship with Sarah and their offspring of children, which we learn in the upcoming. Okay, but physical things didn't change, except when he gets to the Milah. The Milah is the first physical mitzvah where there's a revelation of godliness infusing and being revealed in a physical item. But that's the prototype of what was given at Mount Sinai. So that through this bringing down of the ayin into the yesh, it creates a supernal union, right? Two opposites, paradox is resolved. Two opposites are interfacing with each other, and this is done. The continued infusion of the ayin in the yesh and the continued elevation of the yesh back into the ayin is happening after Matan Torah with physical things. For instance, for tzedakah, that creates a supernal union in the world of Atzilus, higher than Gan Eden. Okay, I mean, these words need to be taken simply. What are you doing when you give tzedakah? Through tzedakah, you make a supernal unity in the world of Atzilus up above, higher than Gan Eden, which creates a joyous release of energy of all the souls which are in the world of Bria, and Malchus of Atzilus becomes the crown of Bria. This is a back and forth. Malchus is the crown of one world, and then she becomes the beginning of the next world, and then the Malchus, and it recapitulates downward. So Malchus Malchus is the machinery, like the king who operates the kingdom, right? Malchus. So everything infuses down into Malchus, and Malchus speaks it out. That's the edicts of the king, and provides the order. Creates everything and orders everything the way it needs to be ordered for the world that this Malchus is operating in. One Malchus of Atzilus operates to be the crown of Bria, and then Malchus of Bria operates to be the crown. It's all the way down. And this is it's so dense, this stuff, because now what do you do? He takes the word, you do tzedakah. Now what's tzedakah? You get to look at the word. It comes from the word from tzedek, and you add a hey, and you get tzedakah, right? And pictorially, because all this, I hope you've encountered it before, that all the shapes of the letters, in addition to having meaning that we describe, inner meaning, the shape of the letters are indicative of the kind of energy that they're bringing down. So what they're saying here,
Rabbi.
Yeah. Wait a minute, I just took you off mute. 1 second.
So you said you add the hey to the word tzedek, which is righteousness, to get tzedakah.
Yeah.
are we going to be, is that similar to the hay that was added to Avram to make it
Sure.
Avraham?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. That's the first thought that went in my
Look
head.
at it. This thing is simple. You may be call yourself a righteous guy, but what do you do with your righteousness? If it stays rum, it stays exalted, I'm righteous. Look at all the things I do. But you weren't created for that kind of righteousness. You were created for a kind of right, like Av. You weren't Avram. You weren't created to stay there in Avram. I'm giving you a letter that connotes spread out, spread down, start doing stuff. That's tzedek, and that's the hay. Yes. I mean, it's not said here, but it's. I mean, what's the word? Obvious. It's anyway. Yes. Okay. Okay. So he said, let's see. Kamashikosva is written in the Zohar. The Zohar actually hints to this. Ad delay kabilas dacher. This is in Malchus. Remember, Malchus is a receiver, and for that purpose, Malchus is identified as feminine, right? On the other hand, Malchus turns around and becomes the giver. The feminine energy becomes giving. But if you want to talk about these two energies individually, the giving energy, coming out of yourself, pouring out and down, is masculine, and the receiving is feminine. So what happens over here, and the hay is a feminine letter, right? And it models even the womb with an opening. It's a reminder of my mom have to do with matzah and chometz on Pesach, right? Matzah, what makes matzah so spiritually valuable? That little opening where your ego can deflate out into, and your true self can, it makes an opening. Okay, so that's all about the hay, the letter hay, and yeah, it applies here as well to tzedakah. Make an opening for your righteousness instead of being Avram. Come on down. As is written, yeah, okay, and uses that motion. And therefore, the Torah doesn't speak about the virtue of Abraham, that then he starts listing his virtues. For instance, that he fed guests, etc., until he comes to this is not until he gets after the hay, until he comes to Eretz Yisrael, and not outside the land of Israel, even though that he was already 75 years old. But until he got to hay, that wasn't the place for it. The place, I'm not going to open up the topic at all, but Eretz Yisrael and what's intrinsically, spiritually, physically, everything about it unique amongst all the lands on the planet. But take it, just the beginning of it is here, because the hay didn't come to him while he was out there with Nebuchadnezzar and all those other people. It came to him until when he was already 75. But let's see, about what? Nevertheless, this is still before Matan Torah, so that even though he now starts affecting the world, it's not going to be affected the way that that same deed is going to have effect once it becomes an articulated mitzvah. The deeper connection, mitzvah is the same language as connect. The deeper connection between God is, in other words, like at least here, two-step. One, he begins to get the world in motion, right, through his acts and his shlichus, but they don't have the power to actually change physicality until Hashem speaks himself into physicality with the 10 Commandments and the 613 which derive from it. So he couldn't mamshich, and he couldn't bring down anything, really invest the ayin into the lowest of the yesh. And he wasn't able to reach to the higher levels of unity until God said to him this commandment. And he's going to come now from the olive rum, from the high level to the low level. And I'm going to skip over here. Just a second. How much time do we have to? Interesting thing. I think I'll start here. One second. Okay, so after he gets the hay, then there's drawn to him the ability to, after the Torah is given, after the Torah is given, something that changed after the Torah is given is that the unity that human beings and all of reality will have with their emanator will come through the deeds of mitzvahs. That's and which, as I said, hasn't been given yet. So it's not only that the mitzvahs will infuse the lower parts of physicality, but utilizing those lower parts of physicality from a mitzvah will have a much deeper effect than what Avraham initiated before Matan Torah. But the Avos, the fathers, he says, they were a preparation for the level of Torah. Through Avraham was drawn down the right side, which is the right of Chesed, right? But it yet wasn't invested yet in physical things that when you did a mitzvah, you picked up or you gave a coin, that didn't create the bind with you and God until after the Torah was given. It was a nice thing to do, and he modeled that you're supposed to do this, but not in the same way, not with the same effect that accrued after Matan Torah. And this is the whole idea, he says, this idea of paving the way, creating the pathway for Torah, he says, is the whole inyan of Sefer Bereshis, the whole book that we're reading now. Because the whole of Sefer Bereshis doesn't have any mitzvahs in it, except for in Parshas Avraham, and when we speak about Yitzhak, and they are before the Torah was given, and they are drawings down of an energy which is, as I say, opening a pathway for the Torah much later. So then he asks the question: why couldn't Hashem just have done it? I mean, then he's already kind of on the road, on the pathway. So, according to this, we have to understand why didn't this little group, Abraham and his family, Isaac, Jacob now, and more and more, the whole Sefer Bereshis, the 12 children of Yaakov, of Yisrael. Okay, why did he then wait until Matan Torah? And think about Matan Torah. Matan Torah, first, before we had Matan Torah, we had to come through Galus Mitzrayim, exile in Egypt. And he now quotes from the Haggadah. And we had to be bitter, be bitter. And we were chayme and levavim, bricks and mortar. So he asked the question, didn't we already merit this? In other words, didn't we already build the merit of our relationship with Hashem, that we shouldn't have had to gone through all of this? It's a good question. And also, how was Abraham able to make all these Yehudim, these unities up above, before he was circumcised? Because the circumcision, happened to him not at 75 when he gets the hay, but it's at 99. So what was that all about? What more did that accomplish? Okay, but it's brought down. It's brought down in the Mishnah and the Gemara Kedushim. Following, Avraham Avinu it's a quote. Avraham Avinu fulfilled the entire Torah, and the Gemara said, "What?" I mean, the Maimon Chazal finishes. Avraham Avinu finished the Torah before it was brought down. He fulfilled the whole Torah before it was given. And this is Talmud Bavli. The argument back is, what? He didn't put on tefillin, right? How did he do that? How does that go with the fact that did he put on tefillin? Did he mention going out of Egypt? Of course not. I mean, it hadn't happened yet. And then, if he had, there wouldn't have been any exile. I mean, what does that mean? Oh no, he didn't. I'm reading wrong. Oh, he didn't mention going out of Egypt because there still hadn't yet to be. There still had to be the whole Galus and Mitzrayim. So in truth, we have to understand. This is a topic, and we'll get this topic. I think yes, we will. Torah is taken on at least two general levels. There's the panemius of the Torah, which today we usually equate that with Kabbalah and Chassidus, panemius of Torah, and sometimes with Hakira and Musar and the things like that. And then there's the chitzonius of Chachma, the external, which we usually equate with the legal aspects, or the Talmudic, the Talmud. So we have, in truth, there's the inner part of the Torah, there's the external part of the Torah, and there's a fulfillment of the Torah, which is in a state of panemius, and that's what the fathers and mothers and their children did. They did, right? In other words, here's how we reconcile it. When the one voice in the Tana says that Avraham Avinu fulfilled the entire Torah before it was given, and the other voice says back, what did he put on tefillin? So the first voice says, hey, there's two levels. And Avram and all those people before Matan Torah, all the Tzaddikim and Tzaddikises, they fulfilled it in panemius. And they brought down, like I said earlier, not down yet to infuse itself into the physical in the way mitzvahs do, but they revealed and they brought down the Or Ein Sof from the supernal Kesser, from above, down below, but in a panemius way. It wasn't yet apparent in anything. But they weren't able to reveal it in the external way, that is in the physical thing. For instance, he gives a good example. Well, of course he does. He wrote this. If you take the parchment, the cloth of tefillin, and the parchment of tefillin, or the parchment in the Torah, that physical item is Kodesh. It's not an instrument of holiness, it's Kodesh. You have to bury it if it becomes puzzle. It's a davar sheba kedusha. It's a thing of holiness. So that didn't happen in the time of Abram. When there wasn't that investment that there isn't, as there is, for example, and just an example, in the physical parchment, where the physical parchment reveals godliness. How? By the fact that it can't be, it has to be treated like a davar, a thing of kedusha. So this is not histalshalis. This is not coming in an ordinary manner. This was a flow. I mean, it began in paradox, yesh and ayin, but then Avram becomes chachma. He begins the first link in the chain of Seder Histalshalis. He's the link of chachma, and Sarah is bina, and Yitzhak, and each one corresponding. There's a whole drawing that I have somewhere at Sukkot about the guest in the Sukkah. And of course, each is personified by some Malchus. Redemption is David HaMelech. So each persona didn't personify; they embodied these attributes, right? So the revelation of Torah itself comes from the deeper, and it's much deeper than this. But they're the realm of normal histalshalis, and that involves going through normal life, such as, well, one exile after another. We call that. He doesn't use expression normal. He just uses they were embittered. Their lives were embittered in Egypt, in all the art of Oda. So this reflects that, a notion that's coming onto the table, and it's something that really needs everybody, really every human being needs to understand, that darkness is for the sake of a greater light. And it's a very hard thing, especially when you're going through the darkness, to have that attitude, right? But another one of the sayings from that song I quoted at the beginning, right, is the way to comfort is uncomfortable. The way to certainty is uncertain. So we have to. This is the gullus, right? The gullus is a stage to geula. I mean, even think about that. That every problem, every difficulty is an opportunity. So every step of the thousands of years progressing is a step toward geula. Yes, sometimes it's hard to keep that kind of faith, but so it is. Okay. So that came through avodah kosher, the earning of the mitzvahs, the earning, the work to give ourselves away comes through the much later when we're given the Torah. And then when that's happening, then the lower worlds down here below can reflect and reflect back up into the upper worlds. And then it's able that the whole Seder Histalshalis of God's will was now being, his will, the Kesser, is invested, is Histalshal, it's chains on down into physical things in, for instance, the parchment of the tefillin and things like this. Okay. But Abraham, he only brought down the panemius, only. He brought down the panemius from above. And therefore, there wasn't any revelation in the physical thing. He was like the prototype, or he's definitely an archetype, but he's the prototype, the prototype invention. It's not yet fully fleshed out, right? So he's just if you could say such thing, connected up above, and that above has not yet really been connected with deed of the mitzvahs in a physical way, in what we call the chitzonius. So this is another, important thing to understand. Nigla and Nister, revealed part of Torah and the hidden part of Torah, are not two Torahs. The halacha is a reflection in the physical world of the source of the halacha in the, not just spiritual, but in the godly realms. And it's a flow. So that's why down here in the physical, one of the reasons why the doing of mitzvahs can have such a profound effect on everything, which is ultimately the geula shlema, because, as I probably said earlier, that high, deep force of ayin is invested in the physical, and when you crack it open, it's a big explosion. Okay, and the way to do that is, how do you do that? Through Torah and mitzvahs. But they did it only on panemius, not on chitzonius. And now then, when he's 99 years old, it was given to him one mitzvah, which became the mitzvah that connotes the entirety of Torah and mitzvahs, a mitzvah that gets actually tied to his flesh. And that happened at 99 years old, of course. Where am I now? Yeah, when he gets the mitzvah of Milah. And he gets that b'maisa, actually, indeed, in order that there should be born from him Yitzhak, from whom comes afterwards Yaakov, and then comes his children, who are going to receive the Torah in a revealed way of the externality of the mitzvah's maisa, and therefore Avraham Avinu hadn't gone through what's necessary to go through, right? There are so many ways to say this. One simple way in English that used to be in slang is that the only way out is through. If you want to see, it's one thing to be spiritual, right? But to be godly from the perspective of Torah is you have to strip away all the hindrances that have been Yetzer Hara. Do they have? Yes, we have a Yetzer Hara. And he gave the Torah specifically to us who have a Yetzer Hara, because the only way to comfort is through discomfort. The only way to come to yourself is to find your home, is to leave your home. So these are hard things for people to take, but it's a little bit easier. It's a lot easier if you see it as part of the holistic present ending and the revelation of the future. Okay. So, okay, we'll do one more little piece, which is we're pretty much, well, let's mention this. Even though next week is Chai Sarah, this mimer ends with a few words about Sarah, about which there are many more, of course, in this week's Parsha. And because let's go back to something that we said earlier. For even at the panemius level, you have offspring, i.e. Yitzhak, and from Yitzhak, Yaakov, requires Sarah. And Sarah also went through a name change, right? He gets added a Hey, and she gets her Yud, Sari, taken away and replaced by a Hey. So, in very simple terms, and what we've been said, his job is to bring it on down, right? So that's the Hey. He's the father, he's Chochmah, but his job is to bring it on down. Sarah's job is not that. And no, it's not about Chochmah. And Sarah's job is about receiving it, engendering it, meaning giving it its ultimately what it's meant to be as it walks freely by itself on the earth as another person. That whole, personhood. I'm trying to get the wrong word. The shaping of the person from that seminal drop all belongs to the woman, and that's a spreading out. That's a Hey, right? But you can't have one without the other. This goes way back to Bereshis, right? He's made this one thing, and he says, God, it's not good for this human to be alone. So what does he do? He separates out. He doesn't create something outside from another, and say, hey, you two get along. He takes out from the male, the human. That's why I call him the human, because as you see, as it quickly unfolds, this human contains both male and female, because female is taken out from him, from a cutting of his rib. So now you have the externalization of a wholeness, but that externalization has to learn how to operate as a wholeness. This is like husband and wife. Learn how to become the one that you really are again. All right? So when that happens, and the part of that happens, he gets the Hey, so he can come down a level, and she gets the Hey to flesh out what he brings down into worlds. She's Malchus, into worlds. So we'll just have a small piece ending here about Sarah. So he says, Sarah also, at the beginning, at the beginning, was also important to her was the letter Yud. Now, the letter Yud, this is a total different way of looking at the letter Yud. So, as was explained it, and it fits over here, it's it's something of zero dimension, right? So, in other words, it's a dimensionless space. From that meaning, it's past being infinite. It has no dimension whatsoever. You can't even call it infinite, right? But on the other hand, it's teeny, right? So the teeniness of it shows on contraction, right? Sarah is the place where this thing is going to develop. It's going, first of all, fertilize, it gets fertilized, right? And it comes from this realm of spirit. It gets contracted down. It's not losing anything, but that realm of spirit gets embodied in something relatively small compared to that allness. So that little yud shows on Simpson, contraction, right? Condensation, may be a good word. And afterwards, when she has to give birth to Yitzhak, giving birth is opening up. And opening up is the Hey, the letter Hey, a breath, Archava, to show on the drawing down, that's the Yud, contraction, and then the opening up. These are the first two letters of Hashem's name, right? Yud K. When you look at that from the perspective of not that it's an essence, but it's the first name that sort of describes how he comes into how he comes sort of outside of himself, into his external. He contracts himself, that's the Yud, and then after the contraction, he expands that contracted stuff into a Hey. So Sarah, the Yud is there in the first place for the contraction, the condensing, that's the better word, condensing. And then it goes away and replaced by the letter Hey, which has breath to show on the drawing down and the drawing out. And this is what it means when it says, V'yikra Shem Avraham b'Shem Hashem. And Hashem said there, called upon the name Hashem. Calling is a drawing down from Av, Ram, from the high level. He's calling, right? This is another metaphor. The deeper levels of the voice, deeper levels, means before they're enunciated and have any enunciation, come from way down in the chest. And by the time you're calling them out, or speaking them out, but calling them out is here, you've given form to each and every one of them. So this is what it means that Avram called the name of Hashem. Calling means a drawing down and a drawing out. From the level of Avram, he comes down with the letter Hey. From the levels of concealed wisdom, he draws down all the way down, and then it begins to say to Histalshlus down to Yesod, and through all these spirits until it's received by Sarah, who is the feminine receiver, which then recapitulates world after world after world. And that's the end of this mimer. Anybody going to say anything? Okay, well, we have to, though, think about what do we take away from this? So that it's so that it's really Torah, being a teaching for life. Well, I'll offer a very paltry one. I happen to host we had a Pagisha in Crown Heights this last week where groups of people come together. This one is a Pagisha from college Pagisha. And so I had a couple of guys from Yale were in the house. You know, Yale's a pretty prestigious place. And so we were talking a little bit about, I mean, not this particular Avraham, but in general, about Torah. And I just gave over one simple thing, which has been talked about tonight. I talked a lot about it, is that learning Torah is not like learning anything else. In other words, it's not so much the information, but what the information implies about life and about supernal life, as well as terrestrial life, about godly life. And I think if we could look at the Torah that way, meaning that when we open the Shulchan Aruch, and it says, this is how an Arab is defined. I'm just using this as an example, right? And we say, okay, I don't really get it. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me that through these little things, but that's what you say? Fine. and I'm going to live my life like that. And I'm going to live my life like that with a certain joy, knowing that this is coming from the place beyond places, the one beyond any oneness, whatever you want. So to me, it at least helps to generate a certain attitude, more, by me anyway, more deeper, a little deeper and more smile on my face attitude, getting through the hard times and learning for, I don't know. So am I leaving you? And you may leaving us till we meet again next week?
Thank you. May I
Okay.
share a bechain?
Yeah, sure. I was begging for one.
So I was trying to like put it, and I'm still not sure that I can adequately express it, articulate it the way that I feel like it's still half baked. But the same way that, because not everyone, yes, I have a hey in my name. I actually have a yud in my name. I have both. However, whether someone actually has a hey in their name or not, there's the aspect of Hashem within us, because we all, from our neshama itself, we have at the core, and it's a matter of taking those sparks and bringing it down into, as you
Yes.
were talking about, the physical, because it's when we do the mitzvahs with the physical that we bring the neshama, that here it comes and originates from HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. Yet our neshama can go higher than where it originated from by our using it in our physical body to do the physical mitzvahs.
Well, everything you said is true. So I get, no.
So it's a matter, I guess my bechain is that I need to tap into that potential as I'm doing the mitzvahs, that I'm doing the mitzvahs, but I need to have that
All
mindfulness.
right, so I would just make a little tweak to that. It's helped me a lot.
Please.
It's helped me a lot. It's my own advice to myself. To go around thinking I need to do this, I can get very depressed. This is what I should be doing. I'm not doing it. So instead of thinking what I need to do, just think of those things, those ideas. Just think of the ideas that you said. Let them become your meditations instead of I need to change. Just let what you just said become what occupy her, and you will change.
Right.
You will
It's
change.
my yearning, and I'm in the process of doing this.
Right. So yearn. That's all. Yearn. And not so much think about how I need to yearn more. I need to pray better. I need to say more Tillim. Just yearn and see where that takes you. I mean, you got enough ammunition. I mean, no, not when I mean ammunition. You know the Torah life well, so you get a lot. We all have a large choice of what action we're going to take in order to bring to ourselves the sense of embodiment of godliness.
Thank you for the shaping and tweaking. Thank you.
Okay. All right. We'll see you next week in Hashem.